There's a new motorcycle brand in India with two very cool looking motorcycles. We've been dying to ride these bikes right since we saw them first at IBW, but it was not to be. Better late than never, I guess. So welcome to our review of the Husqvarna Vitpilen 250 and Svartpilen 250. Let's dive right in. Let's talk styling first, because that's one of the biggest talking points on these motorcycles. These bikes, they've got neo-retro styling. And what I mean by neo-retro is that they have elements of classic motorcycles, but they look properly contemporary. For example, this headlamp. It's a round circular headlamp, but the DRL and the way it's designed makes it look really cool. Now, the Vitpilen, it's styled like a cafe racer. The Svartpilen, it's styled like a scrambler. But there are a lot of commonalities between them. For example, the tank. It's got these protrusions with the name of the motorcycle on it. They also double up as knee recesses when you're cornering, so it's quite nice. You can see the naked trellis frame and the engine beneath that. You can also see that the seat is quite short. It's actually been lengthened for this model here, so this design is the same as the 401, and the 401 in the previous model here had a slightly shorter pillion seat. It's been extended by 40 millimeters for this model here. Something that's unique to the motorcycles in India is that grab rail. Now let's talk about the differences between these two motorcycles. And there are a fair few. In terms of the mechanicals, they're both the same, but when it comes to the styling and the ergonomics, there are some changes. The Vitpilen, being a cafe racer, it gets these clip-on handlebars, whereas the Svartpilen, because it's a scrambler, it gets this more upright motocross style bar. There are differences in the tires as well. The Vitpilen, being more road biased, it gets these road tires, whereas the Svartpilen gets these dual purpose tires. There are other minor differences that you may not notice at first. This gets a single seat, whereas this has a split seat. The Svartpilen also gets this mount on the tank for a magnetic tank bag. And another minor change is that the Svartpilen gets a heat shield on the exhaust, whereas the Vitpilen, it doesn't. Now let's talk about what's going on under the skin. These motorcycles, they share their engine with the KTM 250 Duke. So it makes 29.5 horsepower and 24 Nm of torque. In terms of performance characteristics, they're pretty similar as well. Below 4000 RPM, they're not too sprightly, but above that, they really start picking up the pace and the real grunt comes in at the top end. However, at the same time, they're slightly gruff. Above 7000 RPM, there are a little bit of vibes that creep in through the pegs and on the handlebar, more so on the Vitpilen. The engine is not particularly tractable. Like I said, it likes remaining in the mid to top range. So in the city at lower speeds, you will find yourself shifting up and down gears a lot. But that said, the gear shift, it's slick, it's smooth, and the clutch action is very light. This bike, it feels pretty quick, and you must remember that it weighs 4.5 kgs less than a 250 Duke. The ergonomics do play a big role in the experience of these motorcycles. The Vitpilen, it's far more committed. You're in a crouched position and it does put a little bit of strain on your wrists if you're not sitting properly, especially in traffic. The Svartpilen, on the other hand, it's more upright, more relaxed, and a more friendlier and much easier to ride in that sense. There's no better or worse in this case. What you need to look at is your usage and what sort of a motorcycle appeals to you. If you like the sportiness of a cafe racer, the Vitpilen is perfectly fine. But if you prefer something a little more relaxed, or if you want to ride this for a longer time, maybe the Svartpilen makes more sense. The brakes, it gets 320mm discs up front and a 230mm disc at the rear. It gets dual channel ABS, and like the Duke, it gets supermoto ABS. So you can disconnect the ABS from the rear and slide the rear around. The tires, they both get RevZs from MRFs. However, as I said, this is a road-based tire. It has a higher speed rating, and this one is a slightly dual sport based tire and it has a slightly lower speed rating. We've been riding them all day today, but it's been extremely wet, and in the wet they have a decent amount of grip. I haven't found them lacking in that sense. These two Huskies, they share their split trellis frame with the Duke. The front of the frame is identical, however the rear subframe has been redesigned for this particular application. In terms of suspension as well. On paper, they look the same. 43mm forks up front and a monoshock at the rear, but they have been tweaked for these bikes. For example, the monoshock, it has 7mm less travel. On the go, the ride quality, it has a tad bit of firmness to it, especially over sharper bumps, but over slightly undulating roads, it actually deals with them quite manageably. What really stands out with the Huskies is the way they handle. And that's something that's common with the Duke. They're really flickable, they're really nimble, but at the same time, they're very friendly. They're extremely stable when you lean them into a corner, and overall, they're really enjoyable motorcycles to ride. Even when you're scything through traffic, because they're so compact and so nimble, they're a lot of fun, both in urban conditions, as well as if you want to take it out to the hills for a Sunday ride.
At Rs 1.84 lakhs ex-showroom, these two motorcycles are a cool 25,000 more affordable than the Duke, and they don't compromise on performance.
If your focus is urban riding with a little bit of riding in the hills on the weekends, you should definitely look at the Husqvarna Vitpilen 250 and Svartpilen 250. I think it's a great start from the Swedish bike maker in India.
Subscribe to the Evo India channel and hit the bell icon to keep pace with the thrill of driving.